Hey, Melanie, want to make sure you hear me? Let me know. Thanks. Bye. Hey, this is Keith with How to Build Your Own Home, going live right now. Have a couple of comments, and then we'll take some questions as people kind of chime in. Some things with regard to the market, what's really going on. I'm inside my house right now. My office was really hot. It's 114 degrees outside right now. And I just didn't want to be in a hot box. My air conditioning is not working that great. So this is my secondary office. This is where I do a lot of writing, stuff like that. Things in the market, things to consider, things to look out for, things to be observant regarding the possibility of building this year, this fall. Things are going to change even in the next few months quite a bit. Lowe's, for example, is down 6% year over year on its actual sales. And when you adjust that for inflation, that's close to 15%, meaning that their revenue has been cut back almost 15%. That's just Lowe's, all right? I didn't have enough time to look at Home Depot and some others. That's quite a bit of a hit. And they're already trying to go into the tiny homes market to try to offset some of their losses in sales right now. So you're seeing a lot of contraction. Contraction is when you, and I'm not necessarily a financial expert, but I do follow a lot of financial channels and newsletters and that kind of thing. But a contraction is when it's like an investor says, I just don't want to invest, or the bank says, it's kind of risky right now. We're not going to create more liquidity. We're going to make it harder and more difficult to borrow. And so if you want the money, we're going to require more and more stipulations. That's called contraction. Higher interest rates, contraction. That's when they're slowing the economy, because we were running hot. I mean, really, really hot for a very long time with artificially low interest rates. And people went out and borrowed left and right because the interest rates were so low. And now you're seeing a contraction in that because they're trying to slow down inflation. And a lot of things happen with regard to that. Inflation, deflation, what really causes what? There's a lot of debate on that. But it's obvious now that there is a contraction, that there's a huge pullback in liquidity, a huge pullback in money, a huge pullback in risk. People are just not taking risk. Now, what does this mean for the owner builder? What does this mean for thinking about or getting ready to build a home right now? Well, I can tell you what's happening in my neck of the woods. I cover a huge ground. I build within probably a 75 to 125 mile radius in my market. So I have reciprocity with the state of Nevada and with the state of Arizona, and I build in the southwest corner of Utah. So I'm very familiar with a huge area and a huge market. And I also see invoices and estimates almost on a daily basis from students across the country. And they just send that to me or a screenshot. What do you think about this, Keith? And I'll give some feedback. I just got a bid from a student who was very worried about some concrete, and the bid came in at like $42,000. And it was only a 32 by 50 pad. And I said, that's very high, very high. But I'm also seeing some bids that are coming in lower. And that's going to take some time. But I think by fall, you're going to see more and more bids come in much slower, mostly on the labor cost, because subcontractors do not want to lose their employees. They want to stay busy. In fact, I just texted a concrete subcontractor who does foundations. About 6 months ago, I would text him, hey, I sent you plans, and I'd get an email text a week later, says, hey, I got that. Just give me some more time. I'll give you that bid, hopefully at the end of this week. I texted him today. Within about 2 minutes, he texted me back, and he says, hey, boss, I'll get that back to you tonight. So you're seeing a lot of more prompt replies with regard to bids. And you're going to see that increase more and more, especially as we go into the fall. And I believe as we progress into 2024 and possibly even beyond that. And I've heard a lot of people complain that the quality is not great. Well, that's going to change too. When there's a contraction in the money supply and a contraction in the market, and there's less risk taking and people aren't putting money out there into the market, what happens is quality rises to the top because they're the only ones who can stay in business. You cannot stay in business during a down economy and do really, really terrible work. It just doesn't fly. I've seen it over and over in my life, two or three cycles like this, where a really good, high quality workmanship, great craft really actually rises to the top. And a lot of those who just jumped in the market because the market was good and you just create an LLC and call yourself a framing company, great. You can, um, uh, get some bids and make some living. But if you're really terrible at what you do and you really don't care, there's so many people knocking on your door. Oh, can you please just come and frame my home? Can you please come do this? And you throw out a bid number and you go at it and you really don't care about your quality. Well, you can't do that in a down economy. You can't do that with the market the way things are now. You have to have a far better ethos or ethics in what you're doing. So this is what's going to happen. You're going to see more and more quality surface. You're going to see a little more prompt communication, at least you should be, with a lot of different subcontractors. I've had several subcontractors contact me and say, "Hey, Keith, if you got anything, send it my way." I have some people I'm mentoring that are way north of me, and I indicated that to a lot of my subcontractors, especially my first and second string subcontractors. And they texted back and said, "Yeah, let them know I'd be interested in bidding that." And about a year ago, they would not be interested in that at all. They'd say, "No, I'm just too busy. I've got more than enough work here locally." So you're also going to see subcontractors that have some good quality be willing to travel an additional 25, 50, maybe even more miles for a job. So that means you can widen your field, meaning that if you're typically getting bids within a 25-mile radius, you can probably now get those within a 50-mile radius. And that's something also to think about. For example, if there's a truss plant north of me in another town that's 65 miles away, I might be able to get a little bit of better bid than maybe a local trust plant because we're busier in my area, not so busy up there. They'd be more apt to possibly give me a bid now. So to round that out, you've got subcontractors going to be a little more hungry. They need cash flow for the business. They're going to be a little more competitive on their labor costs, and you can widen your scope. You can widen your field on where you're going to call for bids, and more subcontractors will be willing to travel a little distance for that work. These are some of the things that are happening in the market, and I think it's going to progress. If you are planning and building your home right now and you haven't started yet, it's actually going to look a little better for you in the fall with regard to the trajectory of costs. I'm not telling you where to invest. I'm just telling you on experience. Here's another factor. Gas prices are higher in the summer. They go down in the fall. And when the gas and oil prices go down in the fall, that also affects costs, especially material costs. So if you're really planning to build and you're getting ready to, this fall is going to look really, really good, at least a lot better than right now. Not maybe a lot better, but better this fall. And I would plan on that. I would look forward to that. This is actually sounds counterintuitive with the market and we're in a recession and it's looking bad and looking it can get worse and all talking about war to distract us from what's really going on in the market. I want to talk about the concept of distraction in just a little bit. But these are things to look for, be aware of, and you'll feel it when you start asking for bids. If they respond really, really quickly to you, you know that they don't have much in the hopper. All right. If they respond to you a week or two later, they're probably really, really busy and they don't really care about that much. So be aware of these things when you start to email, when you start to make contact with subcontractors, and when you're trying to get some bids from them. It's going to be a different market. It's a different market already now. It's going to be an even more different market in the fall. Some things to think about. Now, distractions. If you're studying markets in the economy, interest rates, and all of that, you'll notice that a lot of the markets, and this is just my personal opinion here, I've followed the stock market. I followed a lot of things over my lifetime. And if things are looking really, really bad in the equity markets, the bond markets, um, um, in real estate markets, if they're looking like they're going really, really bad, the powers to be tend to force a distraction. Okay. They don't want you to really look at the really, really, really bad stuff. They want you to look at the surfacey stuff. For example, there was a submarine that near where the Titanic sank, and it went down and it imploded, and 5 people died. During that same week in Pakistan, off the coast of Pakistan, there was a boat that capsized and 350 people died. They didn't focus on that real tragic thing. They focused on the story of all these people, that the 5 people that died in a submarine. They're both bad stories, but you'll see that the media tends to focus on the thing that pulls our heartstrings, and not the thing that's truly it's 5 times worse than that. People without any means of survival. And so both of them are bad stories. I remember years and years ago there was a story of it's a true story, of a whale that was trapped in the ice in Alaska, and everyone raced to kind of help it and get it untrapped. And it was kind of a distraction from what was really going on, which was some major whistleblower that was reporting on corruption in the government. But all the media went to that. They didn't go to this. And then a week later, when the well was released, the veneer of society wears thin, meaning we forgot about that story. It was kind of a thing for the week, but it really didn't open. It was a distraction from what's really, really going on. So what I'm getting at is it takes a little effort to study what's really, really going on, and you have to be aware of these things. As a builder, and I'm probably the most expensive person people come in contact with when it comes to, we want to do this. Yeah, that's a lot of money to build a home. And so I have to be aware of finances. I have to be aware of markets. I have to be aware of the futures or where things are going. And so I follow a lot of financial advisors. I follow a lot of financial pundits. I follow a lot of newsletters. Just quite a few. One of these days, I need to put a list together of all the people I follow. And I probably spend at least 35 to 45 minutes a day, probably more in a lot of situations, just listening and following on what's going on, the trends and stuff. Here's one trend that's going to be huge. The BRICS nations, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, etc., quite a few, and there's several others that are coming on board. They're actually creating their own currency, a digital currency, backed by a basket of things, from gold in one country, oil in another country, maybe agriculture in another country. They're going to back that currency by their own resources, by their own products. And what's happening is that we used to have what was called the dollar as the reserve currency for the world. It's now going to lose that reserve currency status. In fact, it's happening right now as we speak. You got to listen to Andy Scheckman of Miles Franklin. He gives an incredible weekly report on this as to what's happening. As that starts to occur, imagine all those dollars that are foreign dollars held by foreign nations, foreign nationals, big corporations. They've got to do something with those dollars. They've got to put them somewhere. They got to take them and put them into an asset, or a business, or gold, silver, what it may be, because they're going to lose their valuation over time, because there's going to be less demand for dollars. And our biggest export over a long period of time has been our debt. We would export it. We sell our debt, and other countries would buy it with securities, and it would be a way to preserve their nest egg. But now, since that's losing value, then people are buried. Study the Weimar Republic, and I'll just end on this one note, and I'll start taking some questions. I see a lot of questions coming on board. The Weimar Republic printed this the mark just left and right, and soon there were so many paper marks out in the market, you were losing the value of the mark that you had. It was happening almost within hours. It was so bad. People are taking their cash that they had and going and buying bread and buying just anything they could, because they would preserve their valuation of what they've earned in the asset and not in the currency. You're going to see that with the dollar, I believe. It's going to see a valuation that's going to be subject to a lot of devaluation. So that's gonna mean two things. It could mean price inflation. It could mean um, contraction of valuation in other assets. I can't tell you which ones, but the more you research, the more you get into that, you'll see that some assets are going to balloon in valuation, and some assets might just go down in valuation. It depends on supply and demand. What's the demand? And how many people are asking for something, and how many people are trying to get out of that something. So be aware, study it. It's going to be a big eye opener the more you go into that. So some things with regard to the market and how to plan best for a home, but it's looking a little better this fall. It's looking better now. Bids are going to be looking a lot better. Uh, questions, couple questions. I got a lot of questions. I need to get to these here. Rizo, good. I asked the question. How many bids do you recommend getting for each sub? It's a very, very good question. I typically like to get at least 2 to 3 on the big ticket items, especially framing. I don't need to get a bid on framing. It's more than 1 or 2 bids because I know that market very, very well in my particular area. I know I could scab and get framers down to as low as $7 a square foot, but I also know that I'm taking advantage of them, and they're not going to survive. That's bare subsistence. That's not even survival wages, but I know I could do that. I also know that the high range is a max of about 14, maybe $15 in my market area. Some might pay more because of the severe complexity of a home. But if it's not that complex, the range could be between 10 and 12. So right there, I'm looking for quality. So I know my cost per square foot for framing. Now I'm looking for quality, and I'm also looking for a framer who will include the windows and include the exterior door installation, meaning the full envelope, covered, sealed, done, completed. So I'm looking at additional work that they will do. And will they add nails to the job? And typically they do. So in that situation, I'm looking for someone who's going to meet my budget, meet my needs, and what I need to have done. But other areas, I'll get multiple bids. I typically get a lot of bids with HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. I get several bids, and those are ranging. I see those that are often $10,000 to $15,000 difference from what's one subcontractor or another. So that's an area that I'm always playing with. Electrical, it's sometimes a little like that, but not nearly as bad as HVAC. HVAC is something I've seen range all over the place. Excavation, for sure. Excavation is something I'm always trying to get as many different bids as I possibly can. I could talk about all the different subcontractors, but excavation is something you're definitely going to want to get as many different bids as you can and really study that out. In my budget, in my program, which is the self-managed program, there's a budget, and there's 3 categories that are extensive and detailed. That's excavation, all the dirt work, concrete, and all the different aspects of concrete and your framing. And in that new budget that I just uploaded last week, I line item each one of those, because if you forget one of those line items and it's not included in the total subcontractor bid, then you know you're missing thousands of dollars, potentially thousands of dollars in an actual cost that's not factored. So those are the areas that I really worry about: my framing, my excavation, and my concrete. And those are the areas that I really make sure that I get covered, and I try to get as many bids as I possibly can. But with framing, I know my market pretty well. Next question. Hi from Colorado. Hi, Leslie. Thank you. Welcome. Another question, Rizzo. I just started building this year out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Great. I have 2 houses in the works right now. Thumbs up. Awesome. Herndon Dump Trunking. That's an interesting. Herndon Dump Trunking. Trucking, not trunking, trucking. What's a high rough in plumbing costs versus mid-range costs in square foot prices? Plumbing is not really done in square foot. It's one of those things that's done by the number of bathrooms, sinks, drain pits, P-traps, you name it. And so it's actually going to factor that. They also factor how far apart those are. So if you design a home with a kitchen over here and a bathroom over here and a bedroom, another bathroom way over here, they're going to factor that in, because that's going to be the linear cost of plumbing. So when I try to design homes and it's a multi-level home, I'm going to try to see if I can keep those plumbings and kitchens and bathrooms almost vertically aligned as best I possibly can. That's going to affect my cost in plumbing. But if I don't care and I'm willy-nilly about it, they're going to be so all over the place. That's going to increase my trenching for underground. It's going to increase my pipe costs. It's going to increase the complexity of it. So that's something to think about with plumbing. So it's not a square foot, it's linear pipe cost with plumbing. High rough in plumbing costs. The average I get with plumbing is between $12,000 and $18,000 for an average home that's 2,000, 2,500 square feet, and that would include a lot of the fixtures. Sometimes it's more, sometimes I'm a little less if I'm smart in my design. And that includes the underground rough, that includes the rough inside the framing structure, and then includes the finish. So, but that does not include a septic. That's separate. If I have to have a separate, that's a separate cost. And so, hello, y'all. Look up. Hello. Welcome. Alex asks, hey, everyone, during a housing downturn, or if the market becomes a buyer's market, does that make it a better time for owner builders? Yes, it does. To some degree. Like I mentioned with some of the comments I mentioned before, right now we are in my market, it's kind of flatlined and it's going down a little bit. Other markets, it's crashing really, really bad, but it's not crashing as fast as it occurred in 2008. And I think there's reasons for it because some powers out there want to control it. It's kind of a sliding, so I would call it a sliding recession. We're just sliding into a recession, and some are actually predicting a really, really bad depression. I hear that all over the place, but I do know that it does look like we're on a downward trend. And so that means that more people are going to be hungry for work, and that means they're going to cut their costs in labor. So it means also that because there's not much of a demand during the COVID situation, I believe I can say that word now on YouTube. During that crisis that we went through, a lot of people were stuck at home. They couldn't go to work, and so everyone did all these DIY projects at home, did home improvement projects at home, and that just threw the economy. Really added to the gross domestic product in the United States because they went to these box stores and bought stuff and did improvements on their home. Well, now people are not doing that. They're not going after and doing huge projects at home. They're holding back their money because they don't know where things are going to go. Some people are losing their work. A lot of big corporations are downsizing, and so as a result, there's not a big demand on materials. And because there's not a big demand on the materials, that should cause the material prices to go down. And so that's what I'm looking for, is because the demand is not there, the cost of materials should also go down. It's kind of like gas. In the summertime, there's a higher demand for gas and oil because people are traveling, they're out there doing their thing. During the wintertime and coming into the fall, that contracts, there's less demand, and so oil prices always go down. So if my logic is right, I kind of believe it is to some degree, and I'm no financial expert, it's just my own personal experience on this, that I think the material costs are also going to go down. Not all material costs, just some, probably quite a few, but they should go down also at the same time as labor costs. So we're heading into a better opportunity than a year and a half ago. I've talked with a lot of people that were going to build during the big boom, and OSB was up over $35 a sheet. It's now down around $12 a sheet. So that tells you the trajectory. I remember building when OSB sheets, a 4x8 sheet, was roughly $3 a sheet. So I don't think we're going to go back to that, but it's good to know that we're heading into a lowering of costs on labor and materials. That's just the trajectory of things. I like your thoughts on bricks, material, copper, and metals. Yes, copper. Remember, copper was so high. Electrical costs were just through the roof, and people were actually stealing HVAC units on their roofs in suburban areas, even as in Vegas and other places. So people had to put security cameras on new builds and even on their homes, so people wouldn't take the HVAC units off and take off the copper. So that was happening. Hopefully that comes down and people can't recycle copper and make money on it anymore. You never know. If a war comes, then all bets are off, and then we go back to, remember, World War I and World War II. People were saving rubber from tires. They were saving aluminum, everything they could, so they could recycle it and put it towards the war effort. So you never know what the planners have in store to distract us from what's really going on. So another question, Wally. Hey, good, Wally. Good to see you again. I have seen some big builders putting remote surveillance camera systems on their property being constructed. Do you have any recommendations on what systems to consider or any thoughts? It's a really good idea. I have been building in a very, very safe environment for the most part of my entire life, and I have not had anything stolen. Now, when I worked for a nonprofit, we had our trailer broken into with a torch. It was one of those metal trailers, a cargo trailer. They just torched the side of the sucker, took out the panel, and took out all of our equipment, all of our tools, everything. So you want to have a camera on spot, but you don't want it to be noticeable. You want it to be conspicuous. So I like to have a camera on my temp power pole, and they typically, if I design it right, they can't see it, and it's recording either by movement or just about all times during the day, and it has a 24 or 48 hour where you can go back in time and see what was there the past 48 hours. And that's what you want, is something that can record ongoing 48 hours in a chunk, or even more than 48 hours if you're going to be gone for a whole weekend. So if you can get that, then by all means do. I have a job up north, and I didn't have a camera on it. My client actually put a camera on there for himself. He just wanted to record everything. But I have a general contractor, a retired general contractor who's a friend of mine, and he actually goes by this site every day because it's on his way to doing other stuff. And he takes pictures and lets me know what's going on. And that's also a plus. Also talking with neighbors, letting them know, hey, my name is Joe. I'm owner builder. I'm going to be building a home. Just wanted to introduce myself. Here's my number. If you see anything or anything that's of concern, you're welcome to call me. And so you're having eyes on the site. The more eyeballs you get, the better. And yes, a camera would be good. I need to do a video on YouTube with regard to that. I've been looking at different technologies. I'm most interested in a solar one because a lot of the times I don't have power at a site on time. And if I can get something that can last through the night, that's the trick. And can it pick up and read faces and license plates and all that at night? That's where I'm most interested. Because where I build right now in a lot of spots, other builders are there, and we just kind of watch each other. But it's at night, you kind of want to watch that. A question. Keep the questions coming. Yes, Leslie asked a question here. We're looking for land. We've noticed there's not as much available right now here in Colorado as pre-pandemic. Okay, is there a trend across the country? Do you think this might be changing? I think it will be changing. I'd like to know where in Colorado. Let me know where in Colorado. I just drove through there a couple weeks ago, came through Kansas. On my site, on how to build your own home, there is a home site selection checklist. It's free. Go there and get that. Make sure that when you do buy land, you go through that checklist. And I've saved a lot of people a lot of headaches because they had that checklist in advance. So when you're looking for land, get that checklist. A couple things in Colorado, you do have radon gas issues, so you might want to know about that when building a home. You want to find out the soils, the geotech. If you're going to get some land, I always recommend make that seller pay for that, because you're going to have to buy that land in the dark, and you don't want to buy land in the dark and say, I'll make an offer. And if you agree to pay for the geotech and get that done, I will pay for your land. I'll buy your land. And if they don't go that, and so you say, if they don't approve to that, then just say, well, I will pay for that, but only if it comes out okay. If it doesn't come out okay and it proves that I got collapsible soil or expandable soil or real nightmare soil, then I'm not going to buy the land. And you can negotiate that. That way you eliminate your risk. And that's what the home site selection checklist does. It helps you avoid mistakes. So get that at how to build your own home. It's also on my professional page at kelschconstruction.com. You can get it there too. But go to How to Build Your Own Home and download that. Okay. Um, let's see. Aviator 657. Great name. I know you answered this a little bit, but can you talk a bit about OmniBlock in seismic area versus a stick-built home? I'm really interested in that product. I'm interested in it too. I've built several homes in it. In fact, the home I'm in right now is an OmniBlock home, especially from this wall down on the bottom floor. I didn't go all the way up with it. This is 2x6, but the bottom floor is OmniBlock. OmniBlock has rebar in it, has concrete in it. It's very seismic proof, and it should be the home that everyone builds in Tornado Alley. If you're not building with OmniBlock, I would not recommend building anything else other than that. Now, I am researching some SIP panels, structurally insulated panels that are also seismic proof, and I've been in contact with the supplier of that back east. And so I'm very interested in that. And a SIP panel is a structurally insulated panel with rigid foam inside. So if you can imagine a house that's got steel beams inside a rigid foam wall, the steel beams gives the structural support, but that a closed cell foam, it's got some flexibility to it. So if you imagine a house that can kind of dance with an earthquake, that's really kind of interesting as well. OmniBlock is going to be this kind of home. I'm not going to move. I'm so strong. Just try to make me move. Whereas a SIP panel with rigid foam, it will give some flexibility. And a lot of your high-rise buildings are made out of structurally insulated panels, so they can give and take with high winds and seismicity. So you want to just find out which one you might want to have in your area. Do you want real rigid seismic strength, or do you want flexibility seismic strength? So I'm looking at both, and I like OmniBlock. It just takes a little skill. So does a SIP panel. That takes a different skill set as well. So if you can find the skill set, if I can find the talent locally that can do it, that's the hardest part. Finding the technology, that's the easy part. It's finding someone who knows how to manage and build with that technology. So, and a lot of people are not interested in learning new technologies. I can't begin to tell you how many builders I run into, and they never hear of new technologies, or they're not interested in building with those technologies, and they keep doing the same old thing. Okay. Let's see. That's my framer. He's actually looking for work. That's Alcides. He's looking for work right now. He's a phenomenal framer. Phenomenal. He's a little bit difficult to deal with, but he's phenomenal. He's looking for work right now. That just tells you what's going on in the market right there. All right. Let's see here. Let's see another question. Sinan, did I say that right? Sinan, do electricians also do the wiring for internet and cable, or I need to hire a different sub? Depends. You might want to ask them. Most of the time, they will do your Cat5 and your cable, but that's as far as they'll go. They're not going to do smart home wiring, low voltage wiring. They're not going to do speaker wiring, but they will do the low volt as far as the cable and the Cat5 for your internet, stuff like that. Now, your internet can come through the cable, and you may not need that. You may want to find out. But it's nice to have both of those come through a box, and you've got your cable for your TV, and you've got your Cat5 and everything, Cat6, whatever they're using right now. They keep changing that. Whatever they're using, and have your electrician do that. And if they've never done that, then you could run into a problem. One of the problems is that you've got a high voltage line going across your trusses, and it could be a 15 amp circuit or a 20 amp circuit, and then they run their low voltage line right on top of that. You don't want low voltage like cable and Cat5 in parallel with those wires. It could cause interference. You want them to run at angles, cross angles like that. And if they know that, then they can pretty much wire at the same time as a high voltage. So, but you want to find out how experienced they are with pulling both high voltage and low voltage. All right. Question to Leslie. We're looking west of Denver, Idaho Springs to Central City. Okay, west of Denver. Oh, okay, closer to the mountains and closer to the mountains. Yeah, I can see why it would be hard, because that's a nice area. It's closer to the mountains. I would just keep looking, even south. towards Colorado Springs. I drove through there. There was a lot of subdivisions, a lot of land there, but you're dealing with rolling hills, and you may not have developments that are fully improved. And the further out you go, the more of the risk you're going to have for a septic, which can add to the cost of the land. Um, that's what I would do, and kind of think about going where no one else is going. I've just mentored one or two students that built homes north of Denver, and they were telling me that it's a lot more open. It's a little more sparse with population, but south of Denver, that's almost like LA and San Diego. It's going to eventually someday from Colorado Springs to Denver, it's going to be one big concrete mass. So you might want to go where everyone else is not going, and it could be north of Denver a little bit, or even east of Denver, staying close, but you're just kind of going a little further north to see if you can't find some land. So just widen your perspectives with regard to that, and it might help out. So um, Tony says, "Hi Keith, I'm using only casement and picture windows. Casement picture windows, okay, for a new build. Is this short-sighted? What are your preferred window manufacturers?" That's a really good question. Um, my preferred window manufacturer is in Sweden, but the windows are extremely expensive. I've always wanted to install them. They're triple pane windows. They've got argon gas between both panes of glass, and you can actually put your hand up against the window in the cold dead of winter, and it's not going to feel cold. But I'm telling you, they're like 3 to 5 times the cost. And I can maybe I should do a video on windows. Windows, for the most part, they do have a thermal break in them. So that's the good thing. 15, 20 years ago, a lot of manufacturers didn't care, and they would just have aluminum windows or whatever, metal or plastic, and they didn't have a thermal break in there. So the cold or the heat from the outside would actually wick inside, and you'd feel it. If you were by some old windows that were aluminum windows that were installed back in the 70s or 80s or 90s, you sat by that window, you can actually feel the cold drafting right onto you. And the windows really today don't really do that. They're cold. That's where you lose a lot of energy, is through your windows, but they're a lot more efficient than they've ever been. But how more efficient can we get, and what are you willing to pay for that? And so I like, my favorite is anything that's kind of a wood clad. I love a wood look on the inside, maybe even a paint grade wood look, but on the outside it's vinyl. And I'm not a fan of casement windows that are wood on the outside and wood on the inside, because that weathering on the outside is going to do a number on those windows. So anything that you can do wood or a vinyl clad, or just straight up vinyl window, and have that on the outside, or both inside and outside, that's a big plus. Now, a lot of windows still are manufactured with aluminum. I'm not a fan of aluminum because it wicks and conducts heat. Even with the thermal break there, the conductivity through the glass is still going to affect that window. So just imagine during the cold winter, you've got an aluminum window on, the frame is aluminum, okay? You can touch that aluminum and it's going to be cold, but you touch that plastic, it's not going to conduct near as much cold as the aluminum is. So I try to stay away from things that conduct too much heat, too much cold in through that window to the outside or to the inside. So I'll try to find the link for those windows. I know that you can get triple pane windows on Alibaba out of China, but I can't verify the quality of them. I do have a student who did buy them recently. I should contact him and maybe go over and do a video on his windows and find out where he got them. I knew he got them for a really sweet deal. So it's just a matter of research. I can't buy stuff foreign like that because I can't wait for the delivery. When I order stuff, I'm typically 5 to 8 weeks out. I can't wait 6 months. I'm not that far out on work. I need it as soon as possible. So, but if you can plan in advance, then all the better. I'm doing a build up on a mountain, and I might just buy my windows this winter and store them underneath the first floor, seal the first floor off, put a door on it, and let the snow come, but store stuff in the bottom, in that bottom garage area. And then when the spring comes, I've got roofing, windows, everything ready to go, and I can put that whole show up. If you can plan it like that, all the better. Okay, getting behind here. Let's see, Keith. Okay, got Matt Bellin. Welcome, Matt. So I'm getting bids at the moment. What percentage should HVAC usually be of the total cost? I'm getting some crazy high bids for dual zone heat pump units. That's a really hard question to ask because it's based upon the cubic airspace within inside the room. Just as plumbing is with linear piping, HVAC is with the cubic airspace in the room. They can tell you, they will ask you two questions: what's the square footage of the home, and what's the ceiling height, the max ceiling height in the house? And then they'll start doing their factoring. And they'll say, oh man, I'm gonna have to size that up. I just researched that's what's neat about OmniBlock and the SIP panels. You can literally drop your HVAC cost in half. And I did that on a recent home. It was a Bloomington home that I did a video on. It's on the YouTube channel. It's probably about 10 videos ago, where it's one of the most energy efficient homes I've ever done. If I built that home at a stick built, I would have had 2 HVAC units. But because I used OmniBlock, I was able to eliminate one of them. But that extra cost that I eliminated actually helped to accommodate the extra cost in some of the OmniBlock. But I'm going to save my client utility costs over decades. So that's why I think that energy costs are going to be huge down the road. And I can maybe talk more about this next week, because I think that's what people are going to be looking for. Look at what's happening in Europe. Gas prices, oil prices, electricity are skyrocketing. And they actually want to start charging people a higher tax for higher use hours. It's not good. I'm glad I don't live in Europe. I'm glad my ancestors came over here to the United States when they did. But that's kind of stuff, that kind of scarcity, and some of it's deliberate, just what I believe. Yeah, some of it's deliberate, and it's caused. All right, Nord Stream 2, when that pipeline was blown up by people we can't even talk about who did it, but there's a report that came out from a great reporter. Can't remember his name. He actually did a full expose on it. But that creates scarcity. And so I would be focusing on building homes with the most efficiency you possibly can imagine, almost to the point where if you're in the wintertime and you've got a Franklin stove, and you can put a Franklin stove in your house and it can heat the whole thing without any electricity or any gas, that's what I'd be looking at, especially if I'm in the very cold climates. And especially a lot of you people building on the East Coast, was a lot of wood all over the place. It's a no-brainer. Let's see. Keep on those bids with HVAC. I know what you're feeling. That's one area, and a lot of it's the copper wire. A lot of it's all the stuff in the condensers, those costs, and then a lot of that stuff is manufactured overseas. So you might want to consider white label products. It's just like a 16 SEER unit that might be a Carrier. They actually will manufacture it and sell it as a white label to a different company, but it's still the same product. But they sell it as a discount because they can do it in volume. So talk to your HVAC contractors and see if they can't get better units that are just as good, but probably white labeled. So let's see. Alex asks, do you recommend buying or building? Houses are starting to go for 160 to 200 per square foot where I am in Birmingham, Alabama, but I haven't found the right one. I've been looking into becoming my own GC. I'm a builder. I would never want to buy something that some other builder did and I wasn't part of it. That's just me. I think a lot of owner builders actually go into being owner builders because of that. And just keep in mind, if you bought from a builder, you're going to have to pay some fees that you don't know are in the cost of that home. You're going to have to pay realtor fees and builder contractor fees and possibly even developer fees. And so if you can eliminate those for the most part and just buy the land and build that, then you can save all those as an owner builder. So to me, that's it right off the bat. At the bare minimum, that's 50,000 and up, and it can go up to 50 to 150,000. I know owner builders that have saved in multiples of hundreds of thousands of dollars because they went strictly to owner builder and they didn't have to pay all those huge fees. So, and these are homes that are, north of $1 million, quite a bit. So yes, Bill, let's get through some of these questions here. Ooh, running out of time. Robert, I had a bid on concrete, and since that bid, the price of concrete has dropped about 30%. That's what's happening right now. It was the reverse a year ago. Concrete was increasing 30%. Now it's dropping quite a bit. If the subcontractor is willing to decrease his bid, do you think I should look at if the subcontractor is unwilling? Yeah, if he's unwilling to drop his price, you need to go somewhere else. That's not good. And they're trying to pocket on the situation. And tell him, hey, I called the batch plant. They told me that when you bid this, and you look at the date on the bid, that concrete was XYZ per yard, and that's a cubic yard. And it's now XYZ less than a cubic yard. If you're willing to drop this, I can stick with you. If you're not, I got to go elsewhere. So call them out. All right. Wally, let's talk about cost saving through a utility tractor once again. It depends how big the tractor is you can get. All right. I have saved a lot of money on excavation, doing my own dirt work, but I'm very cautious on making sure that I can handle it with that size of equipment. For example, I have two jobs. One required an 8-foot overX on almost 2,800 square feet, and then the garage was another 700 square feet. I didn't have the equipment to go down 8 feet, move all that dirt, and haul it out. So that was a no-go. Another job, it was a 2-foot overX, meaning I had to cut down 2 feet, go down, and recompact. That I was able to handle. So it depends on the equipment you have and if you can really move and do what you need to do with the job. So your geotech report is going to tell you what kind of equipment you're going to need. So that's the best answer I can give you for that one. It's my framer again. He's looking for work. The question, Wally, a walkout basement is being considered. So doing the foundation by driving in should not be an issue. Depends. If there's a lot of rock in there, that's going to be a hard one. If it's really just an even soil base, you can easily dig out. That's great. I'm dealing with a job right now where there's rock everywhere and there's roots everywhere. So it depends on the job site and how much grubbing you need to do, how much organic matter you've got to get out of there. There's a lot of rocks you got to get out of there. A lot of these things start to factor into it. And if you have to haul dirt out or bring dirt in. If you haul it out, it's going to be a little less, but if you have to bring good dirt in, that's more because it's filtered and clean dirt. So let's answer these questions here. I want to try to end on time here. I've got a conference call here in a little bit. Tony R, excellent info, Keith. During your new builds, how do you plan for blocking in the walls? Is there a wall product that has pre-installed blocking? No, we just use rough wasted lumber on site to do all our blocking. Now, if you're talking about fire blocking that has to go up 10 feet, then that's also just regular waste material, and they just cut it and they stick it in the frame structure and nail it in, that blocking. I hope that answers your question. I hope so. Okay, sure. Thanks, Keith. The house square foot is around 3,800 square feet. And that was in reference to, for the HVAC. Yeah, I can see why your costs on HVAC are high because of that square footage. What's your ceiling height? That's also going to factor into that. Sloan, click. When is it better to use a drafter versus an architect? If the drafts person I've seen a lot of general contractors kind of get old and they go into drafting in their later years and they just sit at the computer and they draft things. And that would be a great bet. How much experience that draft person has. If they're just jumping into the market and they've been into it maybe a year, I wouldn't trust that. I would trust the draftsman if they have at least 5 to 10, maybe even more years of experience. And they can probably negotiate that deal. The other issue is the draftspeople may not be as adept at dealing with city requirements, and they don't want to deal with that. They're just going to draft you the home and they'll back away and says, I'm not going to do your plot plan. I'm not going to do all your elevations. I'm going to do all this bullet list of stuff that the city is asking you to do. So you want to really talk them through that. I just had an architect that I referred to, and he's doing a job for a student of mine in California. He was a little bit hesitant about it, but I kind of walked him through it. And I said, just go to this city permitting office and find out all that they need on that final plot plan. And once he realized that, he says, okay, I'm okay. It's just a little bit of research. So you're going to have to walk a draftsperson through a little more of hoops if they don't know them to make sure they fulfill everything that the permitting office is asking for. And if they're okay with that, they can typically be a little less expensive. And they're straight up per square foot price typically. An architect could charge the moon. I know architects that are 10% on the total cost of the build, and some architects are $1.50 a square foot. So architects are just a huge variable cost there. Let's get through these questions here. Sinan asks, when I interviewed design build firms, they were pretty upfront about padding 20% over the actual cost, which is close to $100K in Southern California. Do not do a design build. I just did a video on that. It came out Tuesday. Please watch that video on YouTube, and I talk about design builds. That's the most expensive design build. I won't talk anymore. I could go on forever about it. Please watch that video, and it came out Tuesday night. It's going to answer that quite a bit. Stay away from that. That's only for high-end commercial, very artsy buildings where they got deep pockets and they don't care and they want to do a design build. Fine. I'll let it happen. Let's see. So Tony asks, hello, Tony. Do you typically add external expansion and compression joints around windows and doors to avoid cracking during stucco applications? Depends on your environment. If you're in a high humidity environment, that might be a factor. I live in a very arid environment, but we do have monsoons that come through that. On doors, I should do a video on this, how I like my carpenters to do doors. They usually do the slats, the wood slats to get the spacings on there. But I also put a bead of foam in the upper corner, and I don't put it anywhere else. I just put it in the upper corners, and that helps lock in the door, but it doesn't push against the frame because it's the header part. And that helps to really secure that door without it moving too much. But I don't put it in the side of the doors. I let my insulator do that, and he puts a rigid foam in that's a little not as rigid like the stuff you get out of a can. It has more flexibility to it, and it can actually compress and give and take. You want to watch out for some of the stuff that people put in that's a little rigid, that doesn't give the breathability of that door and the windows. As far as others, there's caulking, and the spray foam, the insulator will actually do the windows. They will seal off the windows for you. Don't you try to do that if it's already bid. It should be bid in with the insulation bid. So just keep that in mind. Two last questions. Okay. Home build site being in a rural area, what advice would you give for self-sufficient infrastructure? Well, reserve water, tanks, rainwater, catchment, fire protection, storm shelter, backup power. I would watch for fire protection. If you're anywhere near a forest, you want to stay away from that. I don't want to go into why, because it's a rabbit hole. I don't want to go into right now, but I would stay away from fire issues. I have a parcel up in the mountains, and I'm clearing it. Even though I love trees, I'm clearing it. I'm trying to keep myself away from fire as much as I possibly can. And I'm putting on the envelope of that home complete fire retardant material. I can't explain why, and it's a rabbit hole, but it's something I'm doing. And then with regard to reserve and water, yeah, if your excavator's there, if we were doing regarding the excavator thing, heavy equipment was asked earlier. That's a great thing, because if you have that equipment, you can dig all these extra holes and just drop some tanks in there, but don't let your inspectors see that. Okay. You want to do that after the fact, and then know where it's at, and then take your rainwater to it. And a lot of states don't allow for rainwater capture. So, but keep that under your hat. So, last questions. 2 questions above by Sloan Click and Alex R. Okay. Did I miss those? I hope I didn't miss those. My wife's kind of monitoring right now. Thank you both, Miss Melissa and Mr. Keith. I appreciate that much. Okay, any other questions that I missed? So 2 questions above by Sloan Click and Alex R. I want to make sure I got a Sloan Click. Oh, slab on grade versus crawl space in the humid southeast. I'd probably go with the crawl space, because you're going to get ventilation underneath that. I'm not a fan of, especially in the Louisiana area, you've got a very high water table, and that's going to affect the underside of that slab. And I've seen a lot of situations where it comes up through the pipes. So if I can get a crack, if I can get a stem wall that's at least 2 to 3 feet high, and I put that in the ground, I've got that breathability underneath my wall. Plus, the advantage is if I do any remodeling or whatever, I can get underneath there and move stuff. So I'm more a fan of crawl spaces in colder climates, humid climates. I do a lot of slab on grade in my area, but that's because I build in a retirement area and people don't want steps. And so slab on grade works great for that. But in a lot of areas, I'd probably be building more stem walls than anything else. And I hope I got that up. The other question was from Sloan Click and Alex R. Let me see if I get Alex R. Did I miss a question? I think I got that one out. If I didn't, leave a message here. I think I got everyone's question there. Again, leave some comments, like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate that. Make sure you watch the stuff, and please let me know some ideas for videos to do in the future. I'd be open to that. And I got a lot of ideas from you folks tonight. So you guys really helped me out with the channel on what I should add to the channel, what I should be doing. But I'm just a working general contractor giving feedback on what I'm doing. I'm not necessarily the cream of the crop on YouTube, but that's just me. I'm just a builder trying to show you what's going on. I want to see more people in America, more people in the world, basically, start with a new revolution of being able to do it themselves. And the more we have out there with regard to that, we can start to save a lot of money on the cost of a home. And that's my real focus, is to really help people get into a home that they can afford and save on that. And that's really the end product, making that happen. So you guys take care. I'm going to check in with a student that's going to chime in here for a conference call. Go to How to Build Your Own Home. If you have not been there, check that out. I've got some courses there. It's the First Steps course. If you're just thinking about this, thinking about being an owner builder, take the First Steps course. And then, of course, consider the self-managed course, and it's got everything you need. Again, I've got a new budget there. If you're already purchased that, make sure you download the new budget. It's a 2-page budget, and there's a 25-minute training video that we're almost done in post-production. We're going to be uploading that hopefully in the next couple of days. So be patient on that one. It will be uploaded pretty soon. Anyway, you guys take care. A couple other questions, but I will get to those next week because I got a call I got to get to real quick. You guys have a good weekend. Thanks. Bye.